Sir, please. Microphone's right there.
Question. If other parties in the United Nations, I assume even though you said we should be out of the UN, you would still appoint an ambassador to it. If they tried to organize Security Council action, as we have done to other countries, would you block it or would you step back and let them do their thing?
If we were still in the United Nations, you're talking about.
Would that still be in for a while? Would you step back and abstain or would you block it?
And you're talking about a sanction against another nation. Right. Yes, we should object to that. I mean, if all the Arab nations got together as they have in the past, we should develop a neutral tone to it. We shouldn't be using the United Nations. But likewise, if the United Nations, the United Nations does not have an authority to go to war. They're strict adherence to their own rules. But, what was the very first thing that they did short time after they were organized? They gave the mandate to get involved in the Korean War. I mean, that wasn't a peace mission. That was a war mission. And, of course, Truman took us to war without a declaration. So if there are these mandates, especially with troops and sanctions are an act of war. So, yes, we as a powerful country have put a lot of pressure on the UN because we give them so much money. We think we own it, and we tell them what to do. And we want to put sanctions against Iran. That just aggravates the problem. So I wouldn't want to do it ourselves, and if others are doing it, I would object.
Dr. Paul, I understand a good friend of yours came in from Arizona. He and his wife, Barry Goldwater Jr., to campaign with you and your family. And I'd like to ask Mr. Goldwater if he would explain to the audience why he supports Dr. Paul. Mr. Goldwater? There's a microphone right there.
Well, that's pretty easy. I live in Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona, and about some 40 years ago, I was here in New Hampshire campaigning for my father when he ran for President of the United States. We're trying to figure out who won that race. I think it was Henry Cabot Lodge on a write-in, if you can figure that out. But I've been in Phoenix listening to this great debate that's going on across the country with some of our fine Republican candidates, and I know them all. And I've been hearing all of them sort of say, well, I'm a Goldwater conservative. And I got a little tired of listening to that. And I just had to come here and set the record straight. I've known Ron Paul now for many years. We served together in the House of Representatives. And if anyone is a spokesman for the Goldwater conservatism, it's Ron Paul. Ron has always been consistent for expanding individual liberty and curbing the concentration of power in the hands of some who think they know better how to spend our money. And so I think his message is important this year in the dialogue, in the discussion, and because it offers a contrast to what we're hearing from other candidates. So, Ron, I'm real pleased to be here to support you and ask for the folks to get out and get you elected.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Wonderful.
Thank you, Mr. Goldwater. Next question, please, from the audience. Right here, ma'am. Microphone right there.
What do you think of the idea of the separation of school and state? Do you think that would give more parents control over their children's education? And what do you think the education system in the United States would look like if public funds were taken out of the education system?
Right. She asked, what would it be like, and what would be my position on the separation of school and state? And there is a movement in this country to try and, pick up the separation of church and state. Maybe we should think about separating school and state as well. I think it's a good goal, especially at the federal level. And that's the only thing I have dealt with as a congressman and as a candidate and as a president. And that is, what is the federal role in public schools? And I say it should be zero. There's no authority for that. The only way the federal government could get involved in schooling is through the tax code. Not to issue vouchers. I don't like vouchers in that sense. But if you're a homeschooler or a private schooler, or if you're in public school and you're spending extra money to help your child, you ought to be able to get that money back with a tax credit. And I've introduced various pieces of legislation along that line. That would be one way that we could nibble away until we get rid of the entire income tax, of course. But in the meantime, we'd get back for taking care of education. Now, I think the move that you're talking about actually makes the point of separating all state, even local state. Under the Constitution, the federal government neither has the authority to get involved to control schools nor to prohibit local communities. Local communities have been in public education for a long time. But the closer home, the better. When I went to public schools, it was only the local community, and schools were set up by their own towns, and you had a school board, and you didn't have to go any further. But today, you go regional schools, you go to the state board, you go to the federal courts, you go to the Department of Education, and then we finally get somebody to run for office, like Ronald Reagan did, to get rid of the Department of Education. It didn't happen. And then now we live under the conditions of the Republican Party, who not only doesn't even set the goal of getting rid of the Department of Education, they expand it. We've literally, as Republicans, have more than doubled the size, giving us no child left behind. So those are the areas that the federal government could quickly do something about. We should get the federal government out of it if you want to move down a lower level and get it back to parental control. Ultimately, the real control over medical care and education should be the responsibility of the individual and or the parents. They are the ones who are supposed to be in charge of their children.
We'll get a microphone working over there, but before we go over there, sir, did you have a question? Yes. Microphone right there. Well, go ahead.
Hello, Dr. Paul. I actually have another question on education. I'm a senior in high school, and I'll be going to college next year. So I kind of have a lot of experience in the field of education. And I understand that you think that the states and the local government should be in control of the education. But as president, do you think there's anything that you can do to perhaps bring more diversity to our education, maybe bring back some of the health education that seems to be lacking, but it's so important in our new century, and maybe we should be teaching our kids more than the standard. Like, why don't we learn anything besides world history? Why don't we learn anything besides U.S. history? Shouldn't we be teaching our kids to appreciate other cultures in the world?
Yes, and what you're describing is the problem of centralized control of education, because they don't talk about that. They're talking about how are we going to pass the tests and no child left behind, and how are the teachers going to qualify, and are they watching what the course are going to say. But those are the issues that should be done locally, the curriculum. You might say, well, wouldn't it be good if the federal government improved the curriculum? I don't think so, because even though they might want to do the right thing, if they do the wrong thing, I don't want the federal government picking the textbooks and deciding what courses that they have. And every town and township, every community might be a little bit different. But if they get way off on tangent, you only have to deal with the school board. But I think your concern is justified. It's just that if our goal is to get the government out of the way, we don't want to have these mandates from the federal government.
Thank you. We have an overflow crowd, so I think we can work our way over here.
It. Would you be willing to take a couple of minutes, explain who owns the Federal Reserve, and as president, would you boot them off our soil and abolish the IRS?
Those are certainly worthy goals. Getting rid of the Federal Reserve and the IRS. If we're going to follow the Constitution, I won't be able to write an executive order and do it in one day, but that should certainly be the goal. But addressing the subject of who owns the Federal Reserve, who controls the monetary system, and what's behind it all. The CIA is very secretive, and it's very difficult to find out what they're doing and what kind of trouble they're getting us into around the world and what type of government they're